The gospel today tells us the story of Jesus healing the blind man in Jericho. The blind man was sitting by the roadside, begging for the mercy of those passing by. And when he heard that Jesus was going to pass by, he did the exact same thing as he was doing day by day. He cried out and asked for mercy from Jesus. But the people around him was trying to make him quiet. Those people surely knew that this blind man needed the mercy and the power of Jesus more than them. But instead of helping this blind man, people tried to stop him. Now, let us think about ourselves for a moment here. There are times when we also treat other people around us like that as well. We prevent others from getting to what we want, to increase our own chances, and we ignore the needs of everybody else. We don't care about the needs of anybody. We only care about what we want, and we are willing to push other people aside to get to what we want. So the first thing I want to share with you today is that we often want what we don't really need. And we often prevent others from having what they need because of our greed to get all that we want. We often prevent others from having what they need so that we can get all that we want. Let us instead pay more attention to one another around us in the community, to know what they want, to know what they need, so that we can help them the best way possible, instead of ignoring them, instead of pretending that they don't exist. And when we talk about eyes, as we just had the right of signing the census, when we talk about eyes and the ability to see, there are two terms that I want to distinguish with you: sight and vision. Now, sight is the ability for our eyes to capture images, the ability to see with our eyes. So sight happens primarily in our eyes only. But vision, on the other hand, is the process that our brains and our hearts interpret the images that we have seen with our eyes. Vision happens both in the eyes, the brain, and the hearts. Now, there's a story of a wise man asking his followers how they would know when day has come and night has ended. And one of the followers said, "I know it's daytime when I could tell apart the trees, the different trees in my garden." The other person said, "I know it's daytime where I can tell apart the different animals in my farm." And a third person said, "I know it's daytime when the stars in the sky disappear." The wise man shook his head to all of these answers, and he said, "We should know when it's daytime, because when we look at our brothers and sisters around us, we see the same sons and daughters from the same God. We don't see them as just human beings. We see them as brothers and sisters and sons and daughters of the same God. That is when we know it's daytime." The blind man in the gospel today had no sight. He was blind, but he had vision. He was looking at Jesus simply with his vision, with his brain, with his mind, and with his heart. He doesn't need his eyes to see Jesus. And Jesus, in turn, looked at the blind man also with vision, with mercy and kindness. So the second thing I'd like to share with you today is that there are times we don't really use our eyes very effectively. We only see and fail to process it deeper, to let our brain discern and let our hearts feel. So let us not just use our sight, but also our vision to see one another. And as we heard in the gospel, when being called by Jesus, the blind man did three things. He threw aside his cloak, he sprang up and came to Jesus. The throwing of the cloak is a symbol of his willingness to give up what he had. The change of his posture from sitting down by the roadside to standing up is a symbol of his willingness to change his lifestyle. from sinful to righteousness. And his action of coming toward Jesus is the symbol of his willingness to direct himself to the one true faith. The story of the healing of the blind man today, if you read the Gospel of Mark, it came immediately after the Gospel from last Sunday, the story of James and John asking to be on the right side and the left side of Jesus in glory. This story came immediately after that as a reminder for all the disciples and for us as well. It is a reminder for us to give up what we have, to change our lifestyle, and to direct himself to the one true faith. Not just for the privileges of this world, but for the true glory of God. James and John thought that they saw and knew Jesus all along, and they thought their faith and their service were super, and they requested for the benefits that they thought they deserved. The blind man, on the other hand, couldn't see Jesus at all. He just knew Jesus right there. Jesus was just passing by. And instead of blaming God for his blindness, blaming God for his miserable lifestyle, he humbled himself and asked to receive mercy. So for each one of us, regardless of who we are, regardless of our age, regardless of our experience, regardless of our status, we are called to constantly renew our faith, to constantly giving up what we have, changing our lifestyle, and turning ourselves toward Jesus for mercy. So brothers and sisters, I have just shared with you 3 points from the gospel today so that we can reflect together. First, we often want what we don't really need, and we often prevent other people from having what they need so that we can have all that we want. Let us instead pay more attention to one another so that we can help one another in the best way possible instead of ignoring one another. Second, there are times we don't really use our eyes very effectively because we don't see, and we fail to process what we see deeper, to let our brain discern and to let our heart feel. So let us not only use our sight, but also use our vision to see one another and to see God. And third, regardless of our age, of our experience and our status, we are called to constantly renew our faith, to give up what we have in this world, to change our lifestyle, and to turn toward Jesus for mercy. Pay more attention to one another in the community. Don't just use sight, use also vision, and renew our faith constantly to avoid sins and temptation. May God, who has begun the good work in us, also bring it to fruitful completion. Amen.